So I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's just brought down the internet, if you haven't known, about 24 hours ago and caused chaos. You couldn't buy things at the supermarket, you had to pay with cash, payment systems were down, airlines, hospitals, all sorts of systems across the world. I think this is a good opportunity to think about what we do day to day. Whether you're a software engineer, whether you're an engineering leader, any kind of role within the software engineering space. If you ship a product to customers, this is a good time to kind of reflect on what you do and your practices, how you get to production, how you look after quality, how you look after your systems, how do you make sure that everything's working as planned. What happens when you go and change a system? When you make a change to a system, that's where you're at the biggest risk of things going wrong. I know myself, I've had times when I have made mistakes that's brought down production, brought down customer systems, and all hell breaks loose. Your whole day is just stuck fixing it and getting things back online. I won't go into too much detail about what happened within my career a few times when I've failed like this, but that could be a topic for another video. But I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the ways that we can make sure that we don't repeat these kind of mistakes. I want to point out, firstly, that this is not a failure of one individual. You might have a developer or someone who looks after releases, and they might have hit the button. But this is not an individual's failure. This is a failure of systems and processes. The human mistakes are always going to happen, and you can't help it. Humans are human, which means we're going to make mistakes. So what you do to cater for that is to have automated systems, have checks and balances, quality control, processes, maybe where you're putting out features and changes to a smaller number of customers first, just to make sure that things are okay before you go, global with every customer you have. That kind of thing can help to make sure that what you're shipping is not going to break the world. And look, it could be a very stressful time if you're an engineer in this position. I'm sure there are companies that have a blame culture, and will blame individuals for this. There's always a git blame, entry in some source code somewhere where one developer made a particular change that caused this issue, this outage. But it's not this individual's fault. This is a system's fault. So what kind of processes can you put in place? What kind of systems can you build to prevent this kind of thing from happening? I think it's interesting, right? You do have different levels different domains, different levels of compliance, different levels of reliability and quality that customers expect. In some scenarios, you might be a startup don't have many customers yet. And in that scenario, you're not putting too much effort into quality or security for that matter, or things to prevent failure of what you already have because you have nothing. You're starting from zero, so you're going out there trying to gain customers, trying to find product market fit. And that can mean that, you don't put a lot of effort into that. You're more iterating fast on product improvements, trying to get things into the hands of customers as quickly as you can so you can get feedback and figure out what's working for people. When you've got a bigger business, a bigger company, and more people, in certain domains, you may have security issues around either private information, financial information, that kind of thing. And this is where using CrowdStrike type software is where, there's compliance issues and stuff that companies have to abide by. And they're bringing in those type of tools for endpoint protection to prevent things going wrong. Now, the downside actually of having these kinds of systems in your network and in your production systems is that these third-party systems commonly are a central point of failure. In my day job, in the systems that we build, we have an observability platform that we use, which is widely used in the industry. I've noticed when that system goes down, our whole product can go down. Without extra additional work to engineer things in a certain way, these kinds of systems can be points of failure, and they can be really hard to mitigate against. When they're like a core part of your infrastructure, when they're either part of compliance obligations or security obligations or things like that, they're hard to work around. You need those things for compliance. They are central points of failure. How do you prevent things like that going wrong? I don't think it's an easy position to be in, to be honest. And I don't think everyone has all the answers yet. The failures that we saw were big companies with lots of revenue, lots of money. CrowdStrike, I imagine, is not cheap. There's a lot of things that they want to secure, and so they use expensive software to secure it. But just kind of clicking a button and deploying third-party software, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe we need to have more care and more mind into how we use these kinds of systems, how we integrate them with our production systems. Do we, instead of kind of tightly integrating things, can we have a specific interface for them? Can we have something that still does its job, but is not on the hook in the central line where points of failure can happen, and where it's actually really difficult to recover from? One of the problems with this issue is, even when you know what to do to fix it, in a large kind of network with lots of systems, it's not particularly easy to go and fix. So, in some cases, it takes a lot of work to get things back online. I think I've noticed that, in many cases, in many teams, in many organizations, things like quality, security, privacy concerns, things like that, they can kind of degrade over time. Yeah, I think it's common to have this code kind of rotting in production, where, just over time, things degrade. Security vulnerabilities happen, frameworks go out of date, new versions come out. When you go to update things, it's not always straightforward to just, type a few key presses and have things upgrade and have things work straight away. I think for all software teams, for business leaders, for product executives, leaders, we need to realize that, when we ship things to production and it's in front of customers, it's not just a one and done situation. It's, maintaining these systems requires work over time. I think this means that, we need to be careful about the type of complexity that we put into our systems. Any level of complex system is going to need additional effort and requirements and maintenance and care to make sure that things run, in the future, ongoing, perfectly. And systems never run perfectly. So what do we do? Because humans can make mistakes, we need systems to enable us to roll back quickly. We need ways to be able to put checks and balances in place before things go into production. We need to be able to realize that when we change systems, that's where the biggest risk is. And so, we need things in place to, say, gradually roll things out. All of this needs time and investment to set up and maintain as well. So the system that you're actually building is time spent, but also the system to prevent errors in the future, that's time and money as well. Sometimes the balance we can get wrong, and that's human, I guess. It's not necessarily an issue. I think recognizing that things can go wrong is fine, and then kind of planning accordingly for the inevitability that things will break. What do you do? Have processes in place, have backups in place, have backups tested, that you've actually recovered from a backup and it works. Practice actually doing that, practice having things go down, put additional load on your system, see what happens, have appropriate measures in place, have observability, alerting, all of those kinds of things on your system so that when things degrade. I think personally, like, one of the biggest things that I try to avoid in my professional life is to have customers find bugs and issues for me. I think that's an awful feeling. I don't know why I feel it so strongly, but it's something I never want customers to be able to see. And even though it happens sometimes, the more that I can prevent it from happening, the more that I can put things in front of customers that work, that delight, that solve problems for them, that give them heaps of value. That's what I'm aiming for, and I don't want bugs or issues to get in the way or to look badly upon the product that I'm building or the team that I'm leading or any of that. I want things to work well. I want the customer to be happy. So I think this is a good time for us to reflect as professionals. What are we building, and how are we building it? And do we have the right processes in place to make sure that things don't go wrong? But recognize that they do, and have plans, practices in place that helps customers get back on track. There are other deeper issues with our society in general. I think relying on technology and computers a lot, we have these inherent risks that go along with it. And sometimes I think we forget. If there hasn't been a major global outage in a system for a long time, we're pretty good at forgetting and just thinking that the technology we use day to day is just at hand and working. Actually, I think for software engineers day to day, that can be a trap too. It's pretty easy to think that AWS never goes down. or the network is always up. The system is always available when you go to call it. And the truth is that's not the case. Networks go down. Networks are generally unreliable. I think about customers using, say, mobile devices as well. That's like a classic example where, being out on a wireless network can be unpredictable. And, generally we kind of build things in a bubble. We build things in the best case scenario. We do take some steps to try and make things resilient and reliable, but I don't think generally as an industry we put a huge amount of effort into it. But I guess in general, like 99% of the time, things do work. The problem can be when we get complacent, and then when something goes wrong, that can have a huge impact. I think it's interesting that there are great advantages to having technology. Like I work in tech, you probably work in tech. There's a lot of advantages to being in the industry. But I think we also need to be mindful that technology is not a solution for every single thing. We're never going to be able to hammer out the humanness of us and making mistakes and that kind of thing. We need to plan for that eventuality. So this has been some thoughts. Hopefully it's been valuable. Just hit the subscribe button if you want to know more. If you want to learn about my production issue where I failed and brought down production for thousands of customers, put in a comment and hit subscribe, and you can, I'll probably make a video about that soon. So all good. Hope you guys are back on track. If you were affected by the outage, hopefully it wasn't too impactful. I heard that, there were people in hospitals that couldn't get procedures done and things like that. Just my thoughts go out to all of you guys as well, and hopefully things get back on track soon. Cheers.